and welcome to another episode of the Marco Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. On today's episode, I have a guest. I am going to be talking with Shayla Burtin. She is the founder of Yes, I Can Help You. She is a business strategist with over 20 years of experience in human resources and operations. She helps multi passionate entrepreneurs stop hustling 24/7 so they can enjoy well deserved vacations while their businesses continue to thrive. So let's welcome Shayla. How are you?
I'm good, Angel. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
No, I mean that pretty much covered what I do. I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin,
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah,
Oh,
I've been in business for 6 years now.
okay. Awesome. All right. Well, you took my first question away there. I was going to ask how long you have been an entrepreneur, but so 6 years. So, what made you want to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, the reason why I actually got started is because I had was laid off from my job, and that was actually the fourth company that I was laid off from, and
Oh,
so I
wow.
realized, yeah, that just working for companies is not as stable as it once were. Our older relatives will say, "Oh, you go to college and then you just get a good job and you stay there forever and retire." Well, that's not the case.
That is so
um,
true.
yeah. So after being laid off for the fourth time, I realized, okay, I need to, at the very least, do something on the side, so that I can always have money coming in. And so that was the initial reason for me starting my business. And so I did my business part time while I had another job. And then 2 years after that, I decided to just go full time in my business.
Okay, awesome. And so, two things that you said. One about how you said about older relatives, like, oh, go to college, get your degree, and you just work at that job forever. That is a conversation that, like, my husband and I, we talk about all the time with like our parents and stuff like that. Like, they're like, oh, y'all just job hop and y'all switch jobs. It's like back in my day, we stayed at the jobs. It's like, yeah, because y'all had good benefits and everything and
Right.
things like that have changed. It's like the world has changed so much that now just having a college education doesn't mean that you're going to get a foot in the door, or just
Exactly.
being at a job just because you've been there for 5 years, that doesn't necessarily mean that's where you're going to retire at. There's a whole wide world out there and so much opportunity out there, so I can definitely relate to that one. And then the last part that you said that that it started off as you having like doing it part-time so that you could keep income coming in, and then after about 2 years you decided to just go ahead and leave and do it full-time. How was that for you? Was that like, I know a lot of people struggle with that, like, when is it time for me to leave my full-time job and just go strictly to being an entrepreneur? So what was did you have an internal battle with that, I guess I should say? What was your thought process like with that?
So it was not planned. My plan was to stay, working for at least an additional year before I decided to go full time. But I just really got tired of my job, and that that was really it. And my boss said something that I did not like one day, and I just looked at my my bank account and I said, you know what, I don't have to take this. And so I put in my resignation, and so it was a scary time because I wasn't really a risk taker. Like I know people say like starting your own business is a big risk, but I have always, had a job and just was stable, and so quitting and then just deciding to do my business full time on a whim was definitely scary for me. And I think I was probably depressed the first 6 months,
Oh, wow.
but somehow I've been surviving. But it's definitely been a roller coaster. And so I would like, if I was giving advising other people, I would say to continue working as long as you can. because just having that steady paycheck is really helpful because it's really difficult when you're trying to bring in business, but then also worried about your bills.
Oh yeah.
That's just an added stress. So if you can stay, in your day job, even if it's a part-time job, while you're running your business, continue to do that as long as you can.
Okay, awesome. When you said that you looked at your bank account and you was like, I don't have to take this, I thought you were gonna say you packed up your stuff and walked out the door. Right
Oh,
then. I
yeah.
I was gonna I was gonna be
No,
like, that's the way to really stick it to him right there.
yeah, I would have loved to do that. But I consider myself to be a responsible person, and I know doing that would have affected a lot of people. So,
Well, that's cool. That's good that you put your notice in with you. And to touch back on another thing you said about just making sure that while you're building your business that to continue to work while you can. And you had said that you had planned to stay for another year, but that you did look at your account before you quit. So even though you were planning to work another year, obviously you felt comfortable enough to be able to still look at your bank account and be like, okay, I can do this. Was that because did you had was the extra year just because you had a certain number in your head that you wanted to have in your bank account, or you had like a certain number of clients that you wanted to have? What was the year? Why were you wanting to wait that year?
yeah, so I think so. When I quit, I did have a very healthy savings that would be able to last me a year. But I wanted more savings just in case. But also, it was because my business was not where I wanted it to be. I was not bringing in the amount of clients that I wanted to bring in, and
Okay.
the revenue that I was making just wasn't quite comfortable for me because in my mind, like even though I had savings, I didn't want to touch that savings.
Right.
And so I would have wanted to make sure that I was bringing in a steady revenue consistently before I quit my day job.
Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense because you hear some people that are just like they're just like, nope, I quit on a whim, and then all my clients started coming in, and then you hear other people that say, oh, I quit on a whim, and I was like, what did I do, and why did I do this? And then there are people like yourself who have plans like, okay, I need to see this number in my savings account that I know I can live off of it if I need to, but I don't actually want to touch it. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing that. I know. And you said so it's been 3 years since you've left your job, or
So 4 years. I
okay.
quit in May 2019.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Well, congratulations and kudos to you. So for taking that
Yeah,
risk and stepping out on
sometimes I
faith.
say, "Yay, congratulations to me," and then sometimes I'm like, "Girl, what are you doing?"
Listen, I feel that way sometimes, and I still work my full-time job, and sometimes I'm just like, "What are you doing? And what made you think that you were supposed to do this?" So I
Yeah.
have those moments. So it's definitely I think that's just an entrepreneur thing, sometimes you just look up and you're like, "Oh, I'm responsible for all of this. What did I get myself into right
Right.
now?" So I agree. I agree. Well, thank you. So now you say that you help multi-passionate entrepreneurs, and this is a phrase that I just learned, and I was actually thinking about maybe doing an episode on it because I feel like I'm just always not necessarily all over the place, but I have a whole bunch of ideas just floating around in my mind. And some of them go together and some of them don't go together. But I'm always trying to think about ways that I can make them intertwine and work together. And people are like, you're doing too much. You just need to figure out one thing to do. And then one day, maybe about a month ago, I ran across the phrase multi-passionate entrepreneur. And I was like, oh, what's that? And I read it. I was like, hey, that's me. There's a name for it. I'm not doing too much. So can you tell us a little bit more about what a multi-passionate entrepreneur is?
Yeah. So I used to be that person who would tell people that they need to just stick to doing one thing at a time. But as I work with people like you, I realize that that's really hard to do because you have so many amazing ideas, And then it's like, well, then which one do you start with? And so that kind of holds people back, just the overwhelm. And so, yeah, a multi-passionate is just someone who has a lot of vision. So they don't have just one thing that they want to do. They want to do 1,000 different things. And sometimes they be some really good ideas and they don't always go together. And so it's figuring out how to do all of the things that you love and that you have a passion for, and also have the time to do it,
Right.
and make it work for you.
Okay.
And so I always thought that I wasn't multi passionate, but now and I don't think I was when I was younger, but now I start, my brain starts wandering, and I'm like, oh, I want to do this. And so now I kind of get, I get it.
Yes, that is definitely me. My brain is like always wondering. I'm like, oh, I can do this, but I can also do this and I can also do that. And sometimes my husband's like, so what are you focusing on? And then I'll text my cousin too, and she's like, I need you to focus on one thing at a time. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
but you can't. I'm like, they're all gonna work together. And in my mind, I have like this whole like map in my mind about how we're gonna get from A to D back to B and how it's all just gonna intertwine together. I'm like, you're not seeing my vision. I promise you it's there. So I'm
Yeah.
glad to know there are people out there that I can identify with and who understand me and who get it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so how do you help multi-passionate entrepreneurs?
Well, we first have to figure out like where all these ideas are coming from. Like sometimes things will pop in our head and it's not something that you really, really want to do. It just might sound good at the time. Um, but so I work with these types of entrepreneurs. The first thing that we do is really just talk about what they want their lives to look like, long term. And, in your long term dream or vision for your life, what do you see yourself doing every day? How often do you see yourself doing that? And then from that information, we can kind of craft like, okay, which ideas do you have that you really really want, that are at the top of the list? What makes the most sense to start working on now? And some of them you do need to like put in the parking lot and come back to them later. Um, but we just got to figure out which of your ideas make sense and fit into your long-term vision.
Okay, that makes sense too. And so with working with people, when you're working with them and you're kind of helping them get those ideas out and get those ideas in paper and see like which ones make sense and everything, do you see people, do you find often that people are struggling with trying to figure out which idea makes the most sense and which one can help them in the long term? Or do once they kind of start putting that out there, they're kind of like, okay, I things are a little bit easier for me now. I can kind of scale my brain down to think about these one or two things.
Do speaking engagements and become a speaker. And so he has a lot of different ideas, but one of the biggest ones is wants to do a movie. Well, guess what? A movie is expensive.
Right.
So what other ideas do you have that we can work on right now that will bring in the money so that you'll eventually be able to do that movie that you want to do? So it's really just once you figure out what your ideas are, now let's create a roadmap where your different ideas can lead you to all of them. So they might not all align together, but the smaller ones will help you get to the bigger ones. And so I'm a really big planner. So if you tell me what your vision is, I can create all the steps of how to get there. That's one thing that I'm really really good at. So I'm not the best at coming up with those big visions, but once you tell me what yours is, I can easily figure out how to get to them, or at least get the steps and plan out what all you need to do to make it happen.
Okay, cool. And that's really interesting too because, you talk about a lot of people they just look at the big picture and they don't realize that to get to the big picture, as they say, you got to walk before you got to crawl before you can walk, you got to walk before you can run. And people just try to go straight to running, and
Yeah.
they forget about the little steps. And it's like, okay, somewhere down the line, you forgetting that little step is going to mess you up somewhere. I like to compare it to like the foundation of a house or a building or something like that. You can't do anything without that foundation. Like, you can try to start building it without it, but it's not going to be stable. And so that's what I tell people, a lot of times when I'm talking about organizing, is like, start small with your organizing goal. Like, write down what you want the big thing to look like, and then break those down into
Yeah.
small achievable goals. And I think when we break stuff down into more achievable goals, that gives us the motivation to like keep going. Because when you're just
Right.
looking at this big gigantic thing, if you're just saying, okay, I want to make $5 million, well, first you have to make $5. And if you don't make the $5 million, now you're upset. But it's like, well, did you make the $5? Let's start with that $5 and let's increase it so that we can achieve those small things and we can see each step that it's going to. So
Yeah,
so
I
yeah.
agree.
So another thing that you do in your business is that you help multi-passionate entrepreneurs realize that they don't have to work 24/7, and that they can take time off while building their business. So please tell us what the secret is. How do you do that? How do you build a business and still enjoy life and take time off?
Yeah, I mean, the secret is to prioritize your time, prioritize yourself. So a lot of us, so we start, building our business. We're initially just focused on, getting customers and making money. That's the biggest thing. Um, and but we don't think about ourselves in that process. And so as we are focused on getting all these customers and bringing business in, we're just getting busier and busier. And then a lot of times it's that adrenaline rush, and so you don't feel like you need to take time off until you're just, burnt out, until you hit that burnout. And so when you get to that point, you feel so overwhelmed and you have so much to do, you don't feel like you can take time off. Like, how? It's not possible. And I always tell people that you just have to do it. You have to put it on your calendar just like you would a doctor's appointment, right? You need to go to the doctor, or your kid needs to go to the doctor. You put it on your calendar and you make it happen. And so you have to do the same with your self care and your vacation time. And people struggle with that because they look at their to do list and it's so long. And so in your mind, it's like, okay, I can't take time off because I need to get all 500 things done first.
Right.
Um, but guess what? If you take a day off, if you take a week off, yes, you're still gonna have that stuff on your to-do list. But if you don't take the time off, you're still going to have a really long to-do list. It's never going to go away. Um, because even when you start crossing things off, just more things are going to be added. And so you're never not going to have a long to-do list as an entrepreneur. That's what I found. And so you might as well take that time off, because if you don't, you're not working to your full capacity. If you're burnt out, you're stressed, you're tired, you're not 100%, and you're probably only 20%. And so how much work are you really getting done at that point? So you might as well take a week off, relax, rest, and then and if you have to, maybe at the beginning of the year, plan all of your vacation time up front, and then just plan your work around it.
I love that. That is such good advice. That is like, burnout is real. It is
Mhm.
so real. And when you get to the point of being burnt out, like, I know for me, that's just the point where I just want to quit everything. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore. Forget about it. And it's because you haven't taken that time for yourself. And that was something that I struggled with a lot up until very recently. Like it was as soon as something popped in my head, I'm like, oh, I have to do this. And then I look at my list and I'm like, oh, but this popped in my head. So I didn't finish what was on my list. So now I need to go back and finish what's on my list. Because if I don't check my list off for the day, I'm going to feel like I didn't accomplish anything. And then finally I got to the point, like you said, I was like, it's still going to be there tomorrow.
Mhm.
So what if this post doesn't get made today about my podcast? Guess what? The podcast is still going to be there tomorrow. It's not going anywhere. So if I post it today or I
Right.
post it tomorrow, it's not going anywhere. And like even now, I had already had plans in my head. I was like, after we finish this podcast interview tonight, I'm going to take my shower and I'm going to lay on the couch and watch Golden Girls. Like I'm not doing anything else. And then right before we started recording, something just like popped in my head. And I'm like, oh, I need to do that. I need to work on that. And I had to like stop myself and be like, no, you need to rest. You need to relax. Make a note of it in your phone and do
Yep.
it tomorrow because it's still going to be there. It's not going anywhere. So
Exactly.
I love that advice, and it's definitely good, and I think it's definitely something that we all need to hear. You know, like take that vacation, take that time off, just recharge yourself.
Yeah, it's for some reason we all feel like we always have to be productive. And why? Like, why
Right.
can't we just wake up one day and not be productive? We're
Yes,
adults.
just have yeah, exactly. I listen, I love myself a good lazy day. Like I just want to
Mhm.
sit on the couch with my overstuffed elephant that I use as a pillow, my favorite blanket, and like I just don't want to do anything, but I think it just comes from the culture of hustle hard. You know, if you're not, you can sleep when you're dead. Like if you're not working,
Yeah.
you're not achieving your dreams. And it's just like, no, like I even remember when we were at the height of the pandemic and people kept making posts and it was like, well, you've been home for this long. If you haven't started a business and you haven't done this, then you wasted your time and something is wrong with you. And I'm like, no, don't tell people that. Don't try to make people feel less than just because that's what you wanted to do. That's what you chose to do because you chose to stay up and work 24/7 or miss out on everything that's going on in life. That doesn't mean that anyone else has to do that. And just because you want to
Yeah.
be burnt out at 25, you know, like you do what makes you happy. The rest of us, we're gonna take our vacation and we're gonna make that post tomorrow and it's all gonna be
Yeah.
good. So yeah. So
Mhm.
yes. So I definitely agree. Like I said, I love that. Thank you so much for just sharing that piece of advice because that's really needed. So
Mhm.
well, and so is there anything else that you would like to share? Any other advice that you have? I know that earlier you talked about still working while you're building your business until you kind of get to that comfort zone and what you feel is your good safety net. Is there anything else, any other advice that you can offer to multi-passionate entrepreneurs or someone that's just getting started or even someone that doesn't know how to take a break?
Yeah. I say the advice I always give to entrepreneurs, whether they're just getting started or they've been in business for a while, is to just do what works for you in business while you're trying to figure it out. I feel like a lot of us we're trying to figure things out just as we go, because we don't know any better. And so, and at the same time, we're also listening to experts who tell us what we should be doing. And I think that you should listen to what people say, but just figure out if it works for your business or not. You don't need to implement everything that you hear the experts say because they are telling you what works for them and for their business, but it's not automatically going to work for you. I don't care if they've made eight figures. Following the exact way that they made eight figures is not guaranteed for you to make eight figures with that same information. So listen and apply what makes sense for you. Um, Try some different things and have fun. Really have fun because I feel like you should be doing when you're running your business. This should be work that you love, that you enjoy, and you don't want to turn it into something that you hate. So don't turn your business into a job that you hate.
Yes. Where were you at when I first decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur? You could have saved me so much heartache and so much throwing stuff across the room and yelling that I quit. Like the amount of times that I probably yell, I quit. I could probably actually be making six figures right now if I had like just a nickel for every time I was like, nope, I'm done. I quit. I quit today. So
Yeah.
sound advice, like I love it. It's great. Like people need to hear that because as I said earlier, they don't hear that people don't hear this end of it, and the people who are going through it, like this isn't something that just you're going through or that just I'm going through. This is something that all entrepreneurs go through, but nobody wants to show the unglamorous side of it. Everybody just wants
Yeah.
to show the glamorous side of, oh, how I made six figures in a month. Okay, how long did it take you to get to those six figures? Like what did
Yeah.
you have to do to get there? No one's showing that part of it. And that's another reason why I want to start doing the segment on my podcast, is because I wanted people to see what it's like from the other side, the behind the scenes, the struggle that you're going through, the turmoil, the monologues that you're having with yourself, just the raw, real, uncut, not the glitzy glamour filter. So yes.
Yeah.
Well,
When people say, oh, I was just going to say, when people say,
oh no,
I
go ahead.
made six figures or I made seven figures, what they don't also say is how much were their expenses. So
Right.
you made six figures, but did you have 70K in expenses? Like
Right.
that that's something that they need to say as well.
Yes, I agree with that. And that makes it I was actually talking to someone who I know, they're an entrepreneur, and there's like their business made they're still in the newbie stages, but I think they said that for last year in 2022, I want to say that they made like 80 or $90,000. Like on paper it said that they made 80 or $90,000. There's like, but after you take away all my overhead and all my expenses and everything, there's like I made $6,000. Six
Yeah,
thousand dollars. And I was like, so like you said, people don't think about it like that. You're not
right.
deducting all of that. So yes.
Yeah.
Well, Shayla, I have loved talking with you so much today. I thank you so much for being a guest today and just dropping all these wonderful nuggets of advice. I'm so grateful for it. Please tell my listeners how they can connect with you and where they can find you at.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today. The easiest way to find me is via my website, which is www.yesicanhelpyou.com. I'm also active on LinkedIn and Facebook, and so you can find me just by searching my name, Shayla Burtin.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And I will link all of that information in the show notes as well so that people can just click on that to be able to find you. So,
Thank
well,
you.
thank you again so much. And I enjoyed it. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. Please share the episode with a friend and don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, and review. 5-star ratings and reviews helps the Modco podcast get on other shows' recommendation lists and helps new listeners to find me. Your 5-star review may be read on an episode. Also, if you would like to support this podcast, you can do so by clicking the link in the show notes. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening. Please make sure to follow and rate the podcast whenever you listen.